then maybe I'll go with that.
Would you be Dr. Nadler? I don't know. We'll
No,
talk about that later.
that's too formal. I
Too
want to be
far.
something a little bit more. So Bill Nye lives around the
Yeah.
corner from me,
Really, the
and
science guy.
the science guy, and that's such a cool like moniker
Yeah.
that I would have to be something like Dr. E, the medical OG, or something that's like something that has like some cachet to it.
I love that.
You
I love that. So let's start from the beginning. Why become a doctor? What was the fire that was burning in your heart that you wanted to work yourself to the bone?
to be a doctor, yeah, that's an interesting. I think it's not actually something that I necessarily think about that much,
Mhm.
but I guess so. This is not necessarily a story you want to hear about your doctor or your surgeon because it does
Oh,
not
now I want
show
to hear it more.
because it doesn't show particularly great judgment.
Mm.
But when I was, I think, 5, I was jumping off the top of bunk beds with my best friend from childhood, and I missed the beanbag chair that we were supposed to be landing on, or I got kind of sort of on it, but then my elbow followed through and hit the floor and shattered basically. So I think, so then I went to an orthopedic surgeon, and I think that that's what got me interested. But it's really, it's not, it's something I've always, like, even in high school, like, it was never really a question what my career
Mm.
was going to be. So it's kind of weird. Like, it's weird that
Pressure
I'm
from the parents? Question mark?
not really, because
No. Okay.
um, my dad
Because
was a statistician um, who actually worked at Bell Labs and then AT&T. So back in the day,
oh wow.
yeah, he was like, you guys in AI now are the geniuses, but he was one of those sort of cutting edge geniuses back in Bell Labs a long time ago. And then my mother, who's also a badass in her own right, she was a lawyer, but I like to like her claim to fame. She has two claims to fame. One is she was at Columbia Law School before Ruth Bader Ginsburg was there,
Mm.
so you can that tells you how
Wow.
long ago it was. And I believe she was like the sixth female lawyer in the state of New Jersey
Oh wow.
because they some like newspaper in New Jersey did a story on her, and they didn't say top 5. They said like the way they described her is like one of the first or some like vaguity that's not a word, some vagueness, so that like she was somewhere probably between 6 and 10. But
She,
anyway,
she she gets the OG. She gets
yeah,
the
she's a
OG.
real OG. But
That's
so
funny.
no, I mean medicine was never like, I mean, it wasn't on their radars at all. So I don't
Mm.
know. I know that my dad um, did not follow in his family's footsteps and gave up the department store business that my family, from the old country came over here to they ran a department store in Passaic, New Jersey,
Mm.
and he was the end of that store because he didn't take it over because he was the only male son. Well, that's a that's a redundancy. He was the only son, and so none of the women back then were allowed to run the business. And when he said he didn't want it,
Yeah.
that was the end.
So yeah.
But
S-
anyway,
So
so that's
uh,
what I guess. Get back to your question. I think just positive experiences. It's kind of like anything, like role models, right? Like, you know, eh, when you have a positive mentor or role
yes.
model or whatever, it sort of, even if the field wasn't necessarily where you thought you might be going, sometimes it just takes that one person who like gets you and inspires you, and yeah. So
To me, that is it's one of the weirdest things I've experienced. How one person in one moment, which is random, that you not necessarily spent all this hours with them, can change your life in just a fraction of a moment.
yeah,
Um, I was suffering from terrible, terrible tension headaches. I was basically being sedated. Right, it was the level of medication got to that level where I couldn't even do my job. So I was like, I'm gonna try a different doctor. Came to this new doctor. He basically gave me this like string with like a small little weight at the end and said, "Don't move your hand, just with your mind move the weight." And lo and behold, the weight starts moving, and he explains the kind of micro muscles in the hand, and I am in fact moving it, but there's very, very subtle muscles that basically control everything in your body. And then he gave me a bunch of exercises to do. Tension headaches disappeared.
Hmm.
So that single moment, it was less than half an hour, it changed my life, right?
Yeah,
A thing that I
that's
had just disappeared.
that's super super interesting. And I
It's
actually like when people talk to me about alternative medicine or
this was a
no
bona
no
fide doctor. It
no
wasn't
no no no
a
no no
wasn't
no
voodoo.
I know no no but what it but the I wasn't accusing you wasn't accusing your doctor of being a witch doctor. Um, but what I was going to say is that the Eastern medicine,
Yeah,
acupuncture,
yeah.
alternative things, Chinese medicine, whatever you call all the different things, um, there are there's still a ton that we don't understand.
Yes.
Like I'm impressed that your provider was able to figure that out for you because um,
I
because
think I just got
I don't
lucky.
yeah I don't think that that's necessarily something I certainly didn't learn that in medical school. Let's put it that
No,
way. So
no,
that's something he figured out on his
no.
own later in his life, which is like I said to me it's interesting. I have a very I like outliers. I like, although that was a book that I didn't read. There are lots of good books that I didn't read, like Outliers. Um, and actually, I was thinking about chaos theory, and the chaos book was another good book I didn't read, but had on my shelf that I should have read. Um, but like, I think you learn a lot from the people that don't fit the mold.
Yes, absolutely.
And
So,
that's sort of where my childhood obesity thing
hmm,
has sort of taken me. I've learned a lot from the kids that don't actually meet the standard description of what you would think is going on.
so let's dive into that. Um, I have a initial question. What do you learn about eating right or dietary recommendations or anything about kind of food and health from that perspective in med school?
Not
Now,
enough.
I know my wife's answer, absolutely nothing. Is that true
I
in the
well, yes, I said not enough. She went with absolutely nothing, but there's similar responses. Um, so it's not entirely true. Like we do get
mm,
some nutrition classes,
mm,
and when you're, let's say, you're doing an endocrinology rotation and you're learning about diabetes, you learn about diet. And actually, as a surgeon, um, there is um, well, surgeons used to actually be the nutritionists in the hospitals.
really?
Yeah, because we would put in the gastrostomy
Oh,
tubes
that's
for
right. Before the
feeding.
surgery, you need to. Yes.
Yeah, not to. And so
Yeah.
we were the experts for a long time. And actually, I went to med school at University of Pennsylvania, where something called total parenteral nutrition was actually invented by
Mm,
surgeons. And that's actually nutrition that you can get through your vein, which can actually keep you alive. Like you don't have to
mm,
eat anything.
mm.
And this nutrition through the vein can keep you alive. So
What's
we
that?
don't learn a lot.
Pedisure, or something like that. Something like that. What's that called?
Oh,
Pediasure,
Pediasure. So
something like
Pediasure is
that.
actually the thing. Well, Pediasure is either you can actually I think drink Pediasure,
Yeah.
but it's also put in. So for children and adults who can't eat, you put in a tube in their stomach to feed them, and then you can put Pediasure for kids in there, and adults have a different version. But anyway, the your so getting back to your original question, we don't learn enough, and I've been on my platforms advocating for obesity education in medical schools, and I'm working with Drexel to try to get some medical education involving obesity in general, not just childhood obesity. But and there's a professional society called the Obesity Society.
Mm.
Lack of a not a very not a very out of the box name, but they're doing a pilot study with a few medical schools to try to get a curriculum there because yes, we don't learn enough. And I mean, you can go back to the sort of the origins. We don't learn anything about preventative medicine really in general. Like it's not the US model is not a preventative model. It's not a proactive model. It's a reactive model. Like you get a disease, we treat you.
Yeah.
You get a complication of the disease, we treat that. You get a complication of the medication we give you, we treat that.
Yeah.
So it's
We
just
are
like,
trying to be diagnostic, but not preventative.
yes,
Kind of
exactly.
early diagnostic. That's what I have a fucking colonoscopy plan. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The
So let me ask you this, okay? Us idiots, the general public, there are some very solid opinions that I'm not sure if they're true or not. So we're gonna do some myth busting here.
So the oxymoron of solid opinion, like that's like those two words should never really go in the same sentence, because if it's an opinion, it's still an opinion.
That's
The
right.
Yeah, no, the so I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn about whatever happens to pop into my brain that day. And I also have filmed some YouTube videos
Mm,
on similar topics. And one of them is, how did the medical community lose the trust of
mm.
the population? Like, why is it now that a social media influencer, why is it now that the woman who's been,
That's a can of worms you're opening now.
yeah, the woman who's been recommended as the Surgeon General appointee never finished her medical training, but she wrote a book and has a bunch of followers and has a huge online community. And now she's been nominated basically to be the most, in theory, the most trusted voice in medicine, which is like bonkers, if you ask me. But that's where we are, and that's the reality of I mean, that's RFK Jr.'s platform is making America healthy again, as if the medical community has never given two bits about making America healthy. Like this is all new. Like, you know, and it's a lot of it is truly like, don't trust the docs, don't trust the people who've been doing it. Trust me and my people, because we know the real story, which it's kind of scary actually, if you ask me.
There's a dangerous rabbit hole here of, well, what does science actually know? I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole. Um,
Well,
but
that's what your AI is going to do for you,
uh,
right? It's going to go scour all the data and congregate it,
but
accumulate it.
what data is it going to scour? The influencers' opinions or PubMed? PubMed being, one of
So,
the
right, yeah.
trusted medical journals.
Well,
Which data is it going to take, or both, or the one that has the most likes? I'll tell you, PubMed doesn't have likes.
right. So um, it's a great question. And actually, I learned something that I was watching a YouTube video with my son, because he's
Yet
way into
another
that stuff.
trusted source of information.
Yes, it has to be gospel if it's on YouTube, because I'm on YouTube and I'm speaking only the
There
gospel.
you go.
But it was actually going over the origins of Yahoo search engine versus what Page and Brin, I think the guy's name was, who
Google, yeah,
at Google,
yeah.
and the different, like, and this is
Larry
I'm
Page.
probably getting this wrong, but
Yeah.
the difference between what Yahoo used to do is it would just look for how many times the word was mentioned, like on an internet or whatever, and that's how it gave you its number one search engine result. But then, I guess somebody learned that you could put, if you hid the word, let's say, in white text on a white background, the algorithm didn't pick that up, or didn't you didn't see it if you were looking at it. So you could game the system just by adding all that stuff in.
Yep.
But then
that was the very, very early days of what we
yeah,
call search engine optimization.
right.
Um,
And yeah,
Yahoo actually just decided what the order was based on their own decisions. So there, and you actually had to sign your website up. So it was what we called indexed, while Google was what we
right,
call references. So basically, you had to be like an authority, and authority was built on how many people were pointing to you as an authority.
right,
That changed the world.
right. And that's what I was going to say about, that was the point I was going to make. So I'm trying to explain AI to like an AI expert, which is probably
That's dangerous.
yeah, I was about to say, probably not probably not the right smartest thing to do. Let's talk about medicine.
It's been a long day.
But
let's
but but I think that getting to your point is that I'm hoping that the academic, it'll almost be like, so there's something called impact factor in
Yeah.
medical publications, where it's like sort of the quality of the journal you're publishing in and how many people cite it when they're publishing similar studies. I'm hoping that I'm
Yeah.
hoping that's where we're
So,
going.
so just to keep the audience who's not physicians or married to a physician like myself, um, when we call a cite is basically when somebody in their research says, "Oh, I used that research," and the thinking is that if you get cited by a whole bunch of people, then maybe you're not full of shit. And then the other aspect is this is
You
a
can
common
still
man's
be, you can,
interpretation of it.
yeah, no, but I mean, I've published lots of stuff and I'm still full of,
Fair
you know,
enough. Fair enough. But that's the likes of the of the medical research process. And then of course we have meta research, which, keep me honest here, is the most trusted version of it, where you have 100 researchers and you're like, oh, we look at all the research and we're like, there's a clear trend that 100 researchers say that this is true, so it's kind of highly likely to
so,
be so at this stage.
so a meta-analysis, which is I think what you're
Yes.
referring to,
Yes.
is an interesting.
See, now I'm teaching a doctor about science, so now I'm the idiot.
No, it's good. This is what these conversations are supposed to be about. Like, I'm hoping that at the end of the day, you'll have taught me something about medicine, and I'll have taught you something about AI, or at least vice versa.
At
But
least
the,
vice versa.
but the, but um, the
Meta-analysis.
meta-analysis, and I don't want to go back to RFK because this is not a political um, podcast. But during his confirmation hearings, um, the senator from Louisiana, who was a doctor, basically said there are these meta-analyses that show that vaccines are not causing autism. And RFK's response was, well, you need to go look at this one study by so-and-so. Right, right. And so, right. So, in theory,
I thought you were going to say, that's not as bad as I thought what you were going to say. What I thought you were going to say, but my nephew took that. Like, there's this one case.
Right. But it's similar because he said, so like what you were saying
similar.
is that levels of evidence, meta-analysis is supposed to be the highest, and obviously one report. But what he could have said, which is where I was going with this, is that meta-analyses are actually only as good as the data or the index studies that are fed into them.
Yes.
So if you have a bunch of crap, garbage in, garbage out. If you have a bunch of crappy studies, you do a meta-analysis of crappy studies, you may tell people that you have a great finding, but it's actually just crap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down the path of does science even work? Obviously, I'm firmly in the we got to the moon, so we have figured a few shit out, and the scientific method works. I'm firmly in that camp, as I hope you are too. I'm just joking. Obviously, you are. We're being very cynical today.
Yes,
I hope
exactly.
The audience.
We're going to have to retitle this "Cynical Cynicism" by Ari Block and Evan Nadler. The Cynicism Hour.
Yes, this is now okay. So without going down the rabbit hole too much, there is an issue in the world where science, as a definition, is trying to get to the closest approximation of an absolute truth, and it's on this everlasting journey of figuring it out. And sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it partially right, and then 10 years later we figure out there were some things that we didn't know because it took 10 years to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
That erodes public trust in certain ways, especially when you look at this narrow picture of like, oh, they said it was fine and it wasn't, and now you hate doctors or researchers or whatever. The fact that drugs are so expensive doesn't make us love the pharmaceutical industry. Like, there's so many things going on, specifically in America, which creates these compounding effects. What the fuck? Like, how do we deal with this? What are we doing wrong? Like, what should we change to kind of bring people back to, yes, the earth is round?
Yeah, I think
we've figured that out.
First time I've been on a podcast where the question I was asked was, what the fuck? Usually it's slightly more specific than that, but okay, we'll go with it. Everything you said is accurate, right? Like, there was ulcer disease, for instance, in I think when I was first training in the early 90s. It was just the era where we figured out it was related to a bacteria. Like no one had any clue that ulcer disease was related to a bacteria. We thought it was all these other things.
Stress. Yeah.
Yeah, stress, coffee,
Yeah.
alcohol, all these
Yeah.
other things. So there's definitely things evolve over time as the science gets better, and that's what we want. We want better technology and better science and better understanding to improve medicine and improve everything, improve life. But I also like to, because I'm I don't know, a wannabe mathematician. I like to remind people about the bell curve and that, there's a certain, people think that, so like, for instance, I'm a obesity guy and they get, Ozempic comes out or semaglutide comes out and it says you lose 15% of your body weight. Well, that's the average.
Yeah.
And within one standard deviation of that average, either plus or minus, you don't know what the standard deviation is because you didn't get that in the press release. But even if you go in that one standard deviation, that's still only basically 2/3 of people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So there are all these people who, and they might be your neighbor, who lose a ton of weight on semaglutide and think it's the best thing ever and just tell you like you should do it. And then you don't lose any weight and you're like, WTF, my neighbor taking the same exact drug did awesome and I didn't do that well. And is that like, I'm not cheating. I'm not, slurping down smoothies all day. And then there are other people on the other end of the bell curve who, no matter what they do, they don't respond. So like, I think science isn't binary. And I think people want it to be like, they just want an answer. They want the COVID vaccine is safe or it's not safe.
Yes.
It works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the truth is that it's mostly safe, other than a few cases of complications, just like anything else in medicine. And it mostly works. It may not prevent infections, but it makes your infection less severe. But people don't like nuance. People like black and white. People like, I think people are just sort of.
Here's the problem, right? A lot of this is social psychology, right? It's negativity bias. It's the recency bias, which is, oh, something happened recently. It's the sample of one bias where like, oh, my friend. So there's so much in the way humans think that is not scientific. There's nothing more counterintuitive to human beings than statistics, right? It just doesn't compute. Like if you want to put anybody to sleep on my show, we talk about standard deviations. Like that's the way to go. So there's all this psychology that's fucking us up.
Are you calling me a bad guest because I said standard deviations on your podcast?
I love statistics, so I wouldn't call you that. But here's my other problem, and this is where I attack you as a doctor. I ask doctors like, oh, doctor, like I have disease X. Is there a tell me, what is the chance that I'm gonna die or whatever? It's like, oh, I can't tell you. There's no number. So I was taught a trick on how to figure it out. You say to the doctor, oh, doctor, is it a 90% chance I'm gonna die? No. 80? No. 60? No. 40? Well, I don't know. So it's 40% doctor. Why couldn't you fucking tell me 40%? So why do doctors do that? Why do you have to play that trick? Because doctors know what the percentages are. It's a little bit more complicated than this. You've got false negative, false positives. Yeah. You've got the version of that. Why don't we answer human beings or patients with the actual data?
Yeah. Well, it's a trick.
It's a loaded question. Yeah. It is.
No. So I think, so in my practice, when people ask me, what's the chance that I won't respond to the bariatric surgery that you're going to offer my daughter or me as a person, whatever, I give them a number. I tell them, well, in adults, it's about 20% of people regain weight or don't lose enough weight after surgery. And in kids, it's probably less, but I'm honest when I say we actually don't know because it hasn't been around long enough for us to study it long enough. But I've been told that, this is not answering your question exactly, but I'll get back to that in a second. But I've been told by people that one of the things that they like about my bedside manner or my way I interact with patients in general is I'm very quick to say things that I don't know, which I think most doctors are trained to be the authority. and they don't want to give any impression that they might not know the answer. So I think that's one of the reasons they
So
don't give you numbers, because they
here's
don't
my
want to be
argument.
wrong.
You create more trust. I would trust a doctor. Look, there is no fucking way that my doctor knows everything. So if my doctor will never admit that there's something that he or she doesn't know, I don't trust them. So I would argue that your approach of admitting to this is not my area of expertise, my area of expertise is X, not Y, that actually increases my trust in you.
Well, even in within my area of expertise, and I think of myself as actually probably the world's expert in what I do, there's still a ton I don't know.
This is true.
And so I tell people that. But I think that goes back to your question about numbers. Like, I won't give people a number that I can't actually back up. So when you said that doctors know the numbers, I don't think they know them as well as you might give them credit for, because the number, as you could do 10 different studies of what's the mortality rate of disease X, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And you'll get 10 answers that are within,
depending on the population.
And then you could do the boring statistics. And I'm not going to use the word again, but it's abbreviated SD.
You have been reprimanded. It's okay.
But and then it's like you give people their best. You give people the best information you can. Like, that's my modus operandi for everything I'm doing right now. Is just, and actually it's always been the way I've practiced medicine, is I just give people as much information as I can, as honestly as I can, whether they like it or not, because I'm from New Jersey and I'm just totally transparent, and it's really bad for relationships and for marriage and things like that, but it's not bad when you're a doctor or a surgeon. And I'd let people do with it whatever, with the information, what they want. Like, I don't, but obviously I have my opinions about what might be better or best for any individual patient. But the reality is that medicine in general, I think, is best practiced when the patient is leading the way, and also the patient is is in agreement with the doc or provider or whatever, that this is the path they want to take. Like, if I tell you need surgery and you're like, well, can't I try medicines? And I say, no, you have to have surgery. I mean, there maybe are cases where that's true, but most of the time there's more than one treatment option. And then, of course, if the surgery doesn't go well, you're like, I hate that doctor.
Outcome bias.
So I think, I think, you're a scientific, inquisitive type person. And I think, I keep saying, I mean, I've been doing treating childhood obesity for over 20 years now. And yes, I'm slightly maybe smarter than I was when I first started. I mean, maybe not slightly. I've learned a lot, but I've also learned that there's a lot more that I don't know and that I may never know, because the field keeps evolving.
Here's what I'm amazed by the field of medicine, and keep me honest if you agree with this diagnostics, because I'm an engineer, I'm not a doctor. All my knowledge is from my wife and my parents. Despite, and I'm going to be a little brutal here, despite doctors not being a lot better than, let's just put a leech on it and it will help. They don't have a lot more knowledge than that. Life expectancy has more than doubled. So with we have such a fraction of the knowledge of, let's say, the human body and of medicine and of all the processes that happen in the body. We almost know nothing, almost. But with that small percentage of knowledge that we've increased over the last 100 years, we've made a massive change. Now, to me, that is amazing, because we know almost nothing, but we've gained so much health by something as fucking stupid as wash your hands. Like, that changed the world, right? We're not the surgeons aren't, wiping their asses and then, cutting you up and then, oh, by the way, they just cut somebody's hair. Like, that changed the world, right?
Right. But as you probably know, like, even that simple step was met with.
Yep. You know what? This is a beautiful story. You want to tell it?
I don't want to tell it because I probably will get it wrong, because I haven't thought about it in a while. But basically, every huge medical advance has been fought by the medical community um, each step along the way. Like nothing comes easy, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like, you know, people. But go ahead, tell. I mean, go. I mean,
But,
you should tell the
so
story.
I'll tell it shortly. But the initial thing was it was and this is from my wife who from her medical school. So this is like third hand. So you're gonna have to fix me on the way. But it was a prison, and the theory was that it's bad air, right? That there was something about the air. The air was bad. So even the quote unquote you know theory was kind of wrong. But then the outcome was correct. So like, oh, we need to get good air into the prison, and then they saw the reduction in the cases in the sickness. But at the end of the day, right, it was the freaking rats, it was the sanitation, it was all these things. So they kind of got to the right
Yeah.
answer the wrong
Well,
way.
and that's that's how Rogaine was invented. Rogaine minoxidil was a blood pressure medicine, but then the people who they're giving the blood pressure medicine to started to grow hair. So they're like, oh, it's actually a hair
Yeah,
growth medication. So that happens all the time. Like,
yeah, yeah.
and
The erectile thing that was
oh yeah,
blood pressure, right?
Yep, Viagra,
Viagra, that was
yep,
blood thinner,
same,
blood pressure. What was it?
yeah, same thing,
Yeah,
just like minoxidil.
yeah,
And then like even these the new obesity medicines that everybody's talking about, um, they were originally designed as diabetes medications,
yes, yes. This
and
is true.
then when the people who make the money, the pharmaceutical companies, realized that the side effect of their diabetes medicine was weight loss,
Yeah,
they realized that
cha-ching!
if we
They
can,
found the holy
and
grail.
they I don't think they used AI, but they should have, because they had to go through all the different permutations of changing the structure of the protein until they found the one that allowed the body, that kept the body from breaking it down and allowed
Hmm.
the molecule to induce weight loss. So yeah, like lots of the great
Hmm.
discoveries are by
By
accident.
accident, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you know this one. I hope it's true. Again, this is third hand story, but the Viagra story, they kind of did the research, right? This was a clinical trial, some version of, I don't know which stage it was in. Um, the patients didn't give the drugs back because at the end you kind of give what's left over. So you do the clinical trial, give us the drugs back that you didn't use. Nobody gave the drugs back, and then the researchers were like, huh,
What's
what's
going on
happening
here?
here? And then they did follow-ups and they're like, holy shit, we just made a shitload of money.
Yeah,
um,
no,
not for the
that's
reasons they were hoping.
but well, I thought they were they probably don't care. They
Oh my
probably weren't
god.
hoping. They were probably just hoping to make money. They didn't really
Right,
care
yeah.
which way.
Well, I'm
And
sure a lot of people did, but the executives probably
yeah, yeah.
didn't. But
No, and actually,
uh,
so lots of people give a lot of grief to the pharmaceutical
pharmaceuticals
industry
industries, yeah.
and the research and development that goes on there. But I actually, I'm on the opposite side of that because
Yeah.
I've done a lot of hardcore science in my life, and um, it's hard to do. It's expensive, and these guys are actually really freaking smart,
Yeah.
and they come up with these things, and like it takes the average drug, I think, 10 years at a minimum to go from
Yeah.
like lab rat to human, and I believe it's $2 billion over that 10 years. So like when people hate, like right now, because everybody's talking about drug prices and most
Yeah.
favored nation status and all that whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I think people just don't understand that you could spend $2 billion on a drug and it goes nowhere, and it could
Goes
be a
nowhere.
total
Yep.
dud.
Yep.
10 years and $2 billion, and you get nothing for it. So I
I,
try to get people to give the pharmaceutical industry a little bit of a break, but no one does.
I'm clearly biased because my wife works for a pharma company, so
Uh,
so
uh,
full disclosure, I'll say that in advance.
yeah,
But here's my argument. Keep me honest here. If this is look, there's a lot of corruption. I'll agree to that, right? That's why we have the Sunshine Act, and it's a good thing. But here's my argument. Um, if the American pharma industry is not going to make a lot of money, and we're not going to have these long lasting patents, and they're not going to get rich, why would they take the risk
yeah,
of researching for 10 years and basically wasting 10 years of their time and doing nothing if there's not a huge payday at the end?
right.
And then for 10 years later, countries like Canada to just replicate the generic of it and be like, oh, we have a great healthcare system. Well, why do you have those generics?
Right.
It's because somebody did the research, they figured out the molecule or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
So that's why there are rip-off generics in India and in Canada and in Mexico, because some American company spent a shitload of money. And guess what happens? Because they don't have patent rights, basically the American people, to a certain degree, are funding the healthcare of the rest of the
Right.
world.
And
Is
that's
that
what
unfair?
so that's what that's what the administration is arguing right now, is that it is unfair because the U.S. is paying for all the um,
But what do we do? Do we
medical.
stop? Do we stop solving diseases? Do we
Yeah.
stop
So
building
right.
medicine? Like,
So
how do you?
so right. So the it's not a simple answer. It's not a simple question to answer,
No.
but I think that what we need to, if we can incentivize, so obviously competition drives prices down, right? So the more
Yes.
drugs that do the same thing, the more that drives prices down in general. But it also, in a sort of strange way, it doesn't necessarily push innovation because you're just replicating what
Yeah.
other drugs do. But if you could incentivize, like, so in England, for instance, I I've read that in order for a drug to make it to the um, National Health Service formulary, it has to be actually better than what they
Yes.
already have.
Yes.
So, so that incentivizes innovation, um, and could be one way to sort of it could be one way to get pharmaceutical companies to really focus on what we need and not just on making money and just not on competitors that may or may not add be additive. But it's complex. I mean, I don't think so. Whatever it was 2 weeks ago when Trump was sort of talking about most favored nation status, um, immediately Eli Lilly, I think it was Eli Lilly, they just raised their prices over in England because if we're gonna force America to have the same price as the lowest countries out there, they just game the system. They're like, okay,
I
we'll do
love that.
that, and they
I
just
love
raise the
that.
price everywhere else in the
I
world,
love that.
right? Exactly. I mean, yeah, the
Guess
the
what?
yeah,
Everything's okay now.
exactly. But I do want to say one thing though about the Sunshine Act because
Yeah.
first of all, most of the listeners aren't going to know what the Sunshine
Oh,
Act is,
yeah, I apologize. We should have
but
explained that.
that's the legislation that makes it basically um, it doesn't allow industry to interact with physicians, which might bias how physicians prescribe medications or
Yes,
use different interventions or whatever, um, which is a good piece of legislation.
it is.
However, I
It's
live in
worked around.
Washington. I live in Washington D.C. And while there is legislation that doesn't let doctors interact with industry for the benefit of the doctors, there is no similar legislation that means that industry can't go to your congressman's office and bribe the, it's not a bribe, influence
Influence.
their voting patterns with incentives. So it always makes me chuckle because, oh, doctors can't be trusted. They can't interact with industry because, God forbid, they're going to start prescribing more, um, Wegovy or rather than Manjaro or vice versa or whatever. But it's okay. I'm just going to skip the doctor's office. I'm going to go right to our congressman because they can vote to make all
Politicians are to be trusted.
right, exactly. They're more trustworthy than the docs. The docs can be easily influenced with money and perks,
If we
but
get into the, if we get
politicians are the
into,
altruistic, the
oh,
benevolent altruistic center of
there's
our
no,
universe.
there is no way we get out of the rabbit hole of politics, corruptions. That's never going to end. But look, there was some hairiness around. If you're familiar with Malincrot, I think it was, they they basically bankrupted these small municipalities because the Mallinckrodt, reps, basically the salespeople, they were basically, buying expensive dinners and taking them to trips, and then each drug, I can't remember, but it cost an insane amount of money for one
Yeah.
pill. So they basically bankrupted these municipalities. So I mean, it's true that there has been corruption historically.
Yeah.
That's undisputable. But to put a broad brush on all that's completely
Yeah.
unfair. And
I mean,
it's that
again, I don't mind. I
it's
don't
that
mind that.
statistics, right? It's the
Yeah.
some
I
are,
don't.
some aren't.
Yeah. And I don't actually mind the regulations, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
nothing inherently wrong with having to be transparent about your
right.
industry interactions.
Yes.
It just irks me that we're the only field that has that limitation. Like, like anybody else can basically do whatever they want. But
Yep.
docs, you guys are the only ones. Like, again,
Wouldn't that be
living.
wonderful though, if a politician had to
Oh my God.
disclose
Oh
every meal, every piece of
yeah.
every coffee that somebody
Well,
bought them?
that was the whole thing about the Supreme Court, right? With all the things that supposedly Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and all this stuff. And I keep bringing up politics, which I don't mean to do, but again, it wasn't like, I don't care if rich people take you on a vacation and you're a Supreme Court judge. I care that you didn't tell us. I care that you lied about it, or
Yeah.
like, oh, I forgot to put it on my form. Yeah, right. You forgot. You forgot. You just happened to forget about the $100,000 vacation on the guy's boat or whatever it was. So again, I don't. None of it bothers me. I'm just all about, I guess, in general, like, people just need the information, and then they can either ignore it or not, um, desire. But the lack of transparency, which is, I think, goes back to your question about not trusting doctors anymore, is that there has been historically sometimes a lack of transparency about
Yeah.
data or about things we know and things we don't know. But I don't, the whole influencer thing, like, it's really bugs. I mean, it's although I'm trying to, what does it say? You have to, like, if you can't beat them, join them. That's one of the sayings. But I'm also trying to be like the enemy from within. I'm
Yeah.
trying to be. I call myself a de-influencer sometimes,
I
because
love
I'm
that.
trying to be on the internet, like, just pointing out the the medical misinformation superhighway. That's what I posted about last night, because it is out there. Like, you know, you can find, if you want to believe that supplement X will make you live to 140, you will find someone out there who will say that and is selling that supplement on their website right now.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's just,
So we are running out of time.
oh, I feel
There
like we just
there's
got started.
well, believe it or not, we've been recording for almost 45 minutes, and it's been a lot of fun. There's two questions I want to ask. One is, what is the biggest misinformation that is out there about obesity today?
So that's easy for me. And we didn't really talk much about obesity at all. So you're going to have me back on where we actually talk about the
Done.
science of
Done
obesity.
and done.
But you know, I sometimes make the analogy to how alcoholism was viewed. I don't even remember how long ago that was, 20 or 30 years ago, where it used to be that people with alcoholism were just viewed as weak-willed and just couldn't keep themselves away from the bottle. And then we figured out that it was actually a genetic disease that was passed on from parents to offspring, and it changed the way everybody thought about alcoholism and how we treat it. And the same is true for obesity. Like, obesity is a disease. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's not. No one chooses. No one wants to be 300 pounds, especially not the kids I would see. No one wants to go through adolescence as the social outcast,
No.
who weighs a ton. Um, and again, it's a disease that you wear on your face or you wear on your body. Like, you're not hiding it from anybody. Um, so that would be the one. If I could just change that one perception, and that one take home point. Obesity is a disease, not a lifestyle choice. It's a disease. Now, it's probably multiple different diseases, not just one disease, that all just look the same on the outside. So if I get into my medical speak, it's a obesity is what we call a phenotype, which is what things look like on the outside. But it comes from a bunch of different genotypes, which means the way things work on the inside. So that might be the second sort of thing that I want people to understand is that just because you can see somebody's disease doesn't mean you know how they got there, and it doesn't mean that you know how to treat it. And even if something worked for you, it doesn't mean it's going to work for that next person next to you, or your neighbor, or your friend, or your family member. So,
Yeah, the difference between a symptom and a root cause in kind of everyday speak.
yeah.
Um, the question we ask every single guest, and this is a hard one, if you had to go back to the most difficult point of your life, whether it's your 20s or last week, what advice would you give to yourself?
That is a hard question. Um, well, I would probably give myself the advice that I give all my patients or often give my patients, but it's a lot easier to tell somebody else to do it than to tell yourself to do it, which is give yourself a break. Like, like don't be so hard on yourself. Like life is hard. Achieving things is hard for most people. Some people get lucky and stuff just happens to them, but um, and like just I would probably tell myself not to be so hard on myself because I think especially in the darkest moments or the hardest moments, I think it's really easy to get down on yourself and sort of not remember that you know most people are trying to do the right thing. Most people are trying to do good. Most people are trying to have healthy relationships, trying to be friendly, trying to be trying to love everyone as much as they can. Like most people are not out there doing ill. And so when bad stuff happens, maybe I should have told myself, take it easy on yourself. Don't beat yourself up so much because sometimes things just happen.
Dr. Evan Nadler, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you.
My pleasure, and I will be hitting you up to come back. I promise.
Done and done.